Alright, what's up, guys? So, I'm just gonna go over some, questions or issues that have been coming up throughout my Facebook or my social media. So, and a side note, too, one of the comments I got today was the overwhelming kind of sense of impending doom from someone on Facebook. And I find it very interesting that he happens to be an Aries. And coincidentally enough, I actually just looked back on my phone when I was checking, all my updates and everything. And one of my close Aries friends happened to text me and just ask me, how's it going, what am I doing? Within the same 10 minutes that other Aries person started commenting on my Facebook wall. And not that I don't talk to both of them very frequently, but they're not known for contacting me out of the blue like that for no reason, but just for chit-chatting. So, and also just to take that into account, somebody who's an Aries, usually when they feel the need to go out of their way to make that their mission, it's something that they find very stressing or concerning. So I was looking at the aspects, and again, I've already talked about this too, when there was supposedly that other blue moon that just recently happened, and, the huge hype about, there not being this many blue moons within a certain amount, a certain equinox period, and people starting to get really anxious or whatever. So I looked again at the aspects to see what's going on with that. There's specifically some alignments with those T-squares that continue to keep realigning with themselves that are kind of flowing all together. Specifically around 5 o'clock or so is when this activity on my phone started, and this particular Aries was asking me this question and was concerned. So, said that something big is going to happen, something horrible. Well, the Neptune squares Saturn, as I've talked about before, other astrologers have been talking about it, how potentially catastrophic it could be. And also I speculate, I can't say I've concluded, but I speculate a couple of different quatrains that are by Nostradamus that are specifically associated with this alignment. So, right now, I think I was talking about this last night when I was talking about Gemini season and Black Moon Lilith causing overdoses and suicide attempts, or people, passing on from either or. So, there is a T-square going on with that Saturn square Neptune, and then the opposition from Neptune to Jupiter has been an ongoing thing that's been causing a lot of cognitive dissonance with people, making people not be able to understand reality. And actually I looked up in my diagnostic statistical manual, and it fits the exact criteria for schizophrenic psychosis, is essentially what everybody's acting like. And I'm not saying everybody per se, but if anybody's noticed this whole Bernie Sanders phenomenon, I'm not talking about him as individually, but just the people following him and all this, and all kinds of other things, it just seems like we're in Wonderland. That is the cognitive dissonance manifesting in our life on a sociological level. So, what is making us feel like there's this unimpending doom, that there's something that we can't control? Well, first off, our six senses are going off. So before we just even confuse you astrologically, think about it. If you go and look online, I don't know how much mainstream news is actually highlighting this, because I don't actually watch any of that, but if you go look online and do some searches, or do some underground alternative news feeds, there has been massive amounts of earthquakes back to back to back everywhere. And remember too, we had that solar eclipse that just happened in March, right? So the locality of the solar eclipse was from the Gulf of the Chinese Gulf, or whatever, of the Indian Ocean, and it went across and went by Somalia and New Zealand and parts of Australia, and then over the Hawaiian Islands, and then it barely touched the Pacific coast of the United States. So those are the places specifically that there will be having some sort of traumatic events happen. And so couple that with both of those areas, by the way, that were contacting me are from the Pacific Northwest area of the United States. So, specifically from a locality kind of thing, if they're both feeling really stressed or feeling a sense of urgency about something, it would be essentially their senses telling them that there's something wrong. Because after all, we did evolve from animals, so we do have our own instincts. They're just not obviously as sharp as other creatures. So I know that there's been multiple earthquakes, and Mount St. Helens as well as Mount Rainier has been having some sort of minor activity. Not obviously having any kind of eruptions, but it's been active underneath. And also there's been that concern with Yellowstone as well. And I also did mention too that one of the passages within Revelations, as well as Nostradamus quatrain, references about how the elements will be, burnt or melt, and that, a ball of flame will come from the sky kind of thing. I know I'm not actually quoting it, I'm paraphrasing. And essentially, that one quatrain too that I keep thinking about, that I've thought about for some time now, was that it said, I know I'm not going to remember all of it by heart, but it's, when Saturn and Mars are equally fiery, the air is bare and dry along the meteor. In cold deserts, a great place, there will be wars, famine, droughts. I think that's it, unless I somehow meshed two quatrains together, which is totally possible. Nostradamus, sometimes some of his things sound like the same. But anyway, so there's that, and when it says that Saturn and Mars are equally fiery, so there's different signs that are different elements. The fire signs are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. So when it says Saturn and Mars are equally fiery, I remember looking at that because I was trying to solve the ones that were more astrologically inclined, because it would be easier for me to calculate things and figure out like a time frame for when they might actually happen. So I was like, well, equally fiery. I'm like, that means that Saturn and Mars would have to both be in fire signs. I was like, for that to even make sense. And I kept looking, and then I was like, well, they're actually equally fiery quite often, technically, because they're being, at least 3 out of the 12 signs that are in fire. I was like, weird. And I was like, well, wait a minute. And I'm like, not all fire signs are created equal, nor are any signs created equal. So when I was thinking, like, equally fiery, so they'd have to be in the same sign. I did this about 1.5 years ago, and I fast forwarded to the current time now. And I was able to see that Sagittarius was what Mars and Saturn were both in. And it's going to be at least a good minute before we have Aries and Sagittarius again. Gosh darn, I hate when I do that. When we have Saturn and Aries again, sorry. So that would mean that if we're going to essentially be having some sort of, catastrophic events because of the energy of the Uranus-Pluto square, it wouldn't make sense that his quatrain would have to happen later. Which, it could. Like I said, I haven't proven anything. But it says when equally fiery, and then I can't remember, I did it so long ago. I can't remember, I was trying to fact check it or find some other source that said something similar, and all I can recall is that I found a couple of different mediums, Nostradamus quatrains, and then I referenced some Bible and holy texts about there being some sort of asteroid or fire falling from the sky kind of thing. So, and I've had this discussion with some people, some of my friends, saying do you think you'd be able to tell the difference between an asteroid coming towards the Earth or a giant volcano spewing ash and fire and whatever else everywhere, like Yellowstone, for example? And obviously, I probably don't know that many people that have been that close to a volcanic eruption, or obviously some sort of asteroid hitting the Earth. But just kind of brainstorming, to me, it just makes sense. It seems like, depending on your visibility and everything, it might translate the same way. And even if it doesn't translate the same way to us per se, because we've obviously seen a lot with a lot of the technology and advancements we have nowadays, we get to see all kinds of things that obviously ancient cultures didn't. So to them, would it look the same? I tend to believe that yes, it could look the same. So that being said, my whole point in that spew of words there is Pluto rules over volcanoes, volcanic activity, even the magma underneath. Also represents radiation, and it represents the destruction of things. And Capricorn represents the core, the crust, the structure, and the essentially the ground, the platelets. So Pluto is in Capricorn right now, obviously, most people know that. And then we continue to have this traumatic Uranus square with that, or at least the energy is playing out. And then, as I've said before in some of my YouTube tutorial videos, Jupiter essentially just magnifies anything that it has contact with. So, if we were... I can't really recall if Jupiter had been a part of this alignment at all at this point, but now, instead of there being some sort of instant trauma with Pluto, we have this overwhelming, overbearing Neptunian energy squaring Saturn, which is our stability in our life, our core, our foundation, being magnified. So the complete drowning or engulfing of everything that we know in our lives, how we carry on our lives, the social norms that we know, everything as life as we know it, is not only being tested right now, but is essentially either physiologically or metaphorically going to be completely annihilated. And that's what that T-squared translates to. And that's what people are feeling. And so, obviously I've talked about this before, so I was trying to think, I'm like, so what would make, specifically, because I found it just interesting that both my Aries friends were contacting me at the same time. I'm like, what would make both my Aries friends just out of nowhere contact me simultaneously? And I'm like, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, so I looked at Mars. Mars is obviously opposition to the Sun, and Venus is with the Sun. So me being a Libra, I was thinking maybe it's the polarity thing. And I was like, well, I guess no. I mean, I know for a fact that the polarity or the opposition between Mars and Venus right now is causing either some sort of, tension towards Libras specifically. And I'm not saying that's just because of my own experiences, but one of my other Libra friends, and then in fact, that same kind of alignment was going on for my friend's birthday over the past weekend, and I got in that heated argument that I ended up posting on YouTube and about the economy, and the guy who was arguing with me and calling me an idiot and stuff, he happened to be a Libra, and he was essentially being tense towards me, and that was evident by the rest of the night. And I was obviously being intense towards him, and then I totally embarrassed him. But we're not going to go on anymore about that, because this is not like me trying to talk up about that. But basically what I'm saying is that, yes, there's either some tension or some, energy being propelled towards Libras, I would assume. It could potentially be Tauruses also, just because they're co-rulers of Venus. And, well, the funny thing is that guy was arguing with me, and then he hit on my other Libra friend. I was like, holy cow. But yeah, that's not what I was actually thinking about. So around 5 p.m., I went and looked at the aspects. And then I looked at whichever planet ruler was ruling that hour, and it was the Sun. So, I mean, essentially that's supposed to be the self, or the core self. But I noticed something that I'll have to confirm later through other, correlating other experiences and looking at the transits. But because the angular houses are supposed to represent now, which that's here and now, the present time, which is the first house, the 10th house, the 7th, and the 4th. We had Lilith, opposition Uranus. Lilith was in the first house on the ascendant. Uranus was in the 7th house on the descendant. So that's South and Other. And then we had... What is it? I believe it was Neptune. Yeah, Neptune on the IC, which is the 4th house. And so we didn't have necessarily anything in the 10th house, but just the fact that Lilith specifically is, again, making some of this gloom and doom kind of vibe initially happen, and a lot of it's being fed in from Uranus's energy opposition her. And no, it's the moon that's in that T-square, that's right. So, and then your emotions are associated obviously with your moon, right? And since Lilith is supposed to be the dark side of the moon, they essentially have an easier time communicating when they're aspecting. So she has direct, a direct connection to your moon. So that explains it. There's 3 of those planets that are making a T-square that would essentially be affecting your emotional complex, and one would be trying to get into your head that would be making you feel like that. And I'm not saying that like that, it's nothing to be worried about, or, that it's all in your head and everything's okay. I don't think I've said everything's okay ever, and I'm not going to start now. But there are some things to be concerned about, and in my opinion, to prepare for. And I have this feeling that my podcast is going to end up morphing into a doomsday prepping, or this is what's going to happen now kind of thing. And with the kind of questions that I'm getting, I think that's the direction in which I'm being led anyway. But yeah, so I won't mention his name just in case he's one of those type of people that doesn't want me to talk about me on air. But yes, Aries friend, hi. This is for you. And like I said, if anybody has any questions, feel free to tweet me at my handler. It's at Ray Reinhardt's, all one word. Or you can always email me, especially if you want a consultation. That would be rayreinhardts@gmail.com. There's always the hashtag Apple Valley Astrologer. And all these should be linked to my podcast URL profile, which is spreakers.com/user/Plutonian astrology. And yeah, hopefully I'm going to try. I'm heading to Norway tomorrow, but I'm going to try to do that transit overview. If not, I'm definitely going to take my laptop with me tomorrow, and in my downtime in the hotel, I'll do it then. So, alright, thanks guys.